Welcome. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and we're going to talk real quick about US Agent, the new card coming to Marvel Snap that a lot of people are talking about, but not necessarily for all of the best reasons, because US Agent is the card of the season that many people are already considering a skip because of all of the good cards that are also surrounding before and after. So let's dive a little deeper into US Agent and decide for ourselves if this is a card that is worth your spotlights or your tokens. So for all of these deck breakdowns, card breakdowns, new announcements, etc., take a look at that subscribe button down below on YouTube. You go ahead and hit that little thumbs up part, and then that helps out the channel and discoverability and allows all of us here on the guest list to grow at the same time. So let's swing on over there, take a look at US Agent. It's a 2/3 with the ongoing effect of 4, 5, and 6 cost cards here have -3 power. Okay, a couple of things about this also stand out to me. Number one, look, it's a 2/3. I mean, it's just basic stats. It's pretty baseline stats, right? That's pretty fair. It's not great, it's not good, it's just a tech card at 2/3. Now, 2-cost tech cards are specifically meant to be paired with cards like Shang-Chi and your big 4-cost big oomph cards. But this one is just taking a little bit of power. And if you're at a 2/3 and it hits one of your opponent's targets, well then yes, now you've got a 2/6, and those are pretty good stats. It's like you would play Maximus. But at the same time, Maximus is a guarantee, and Maximus can't hurt you. This card can hurt you. And that makes all of the decks that you may want to have played with this previously change completely, because this is a reciprocal effect. It's not only going to take 3 off of them, it's also going to take 3 off of you. And I sat down really trying to think hard about different ways to make this work, because first and foremost, you're going to say, oh, it's a negative affliction to you, like Typhoid Mary or any of those other cards. All right, just run Shang-Chi and you're protected with this, and then run your Luke Cage and you're protected with this. And then look, the week that this comes out, and this happens with every new card, be ready for this. You're going to see a load of Luke Cages. So if you're an affliction player, this may not be your week. But you're also, in turn, because you see a lot of Luke Cages, you're also going to see a lot of rogues and enchantresses. And I think Enchantress is just as important here, because it's a 4-cost card that is going to remove the ongoing that would be hurting a 4-cost card. So be weary of that specifically in the week of release for US Agent. But back to Shang-Chi for a second here. I do see a small synergy for US Agent in actually helping you to keep your cards out of Shang-Chi range. So if you are a Luke Cage player working with US Agent, there's two different directions you could go. You could play your big cards out on turns 4 and 5, and then Luke Cage on 6 to bring it back over the top, so that way they stay out of Shang-Chi range earlier on, because we just saw we just saw Crossbones get a buff to 410, so we're gonna see more Scar synergies and more bigger cards come to the game, so the timing of this makes a lot of sense. However, if you can keep yours lower, that's safe and good. But then, on the opposite end of things, if you play this earlier, well, you're kind of forecasting it too. It's a double-edged sword, literally. So I'm not 100% sure that's the line I want to go with it, because you could play either US Agent first and then Luke Cage later, or you could play Luke Cage early and drop this to act like a 2/6 or a 2/9 depending on the lane, or more. So I'm not 100% sure with it, if that's the direction I want to go. And a lot of the synergies I wanted to work with this didn't feel good, but there is one in particular that did stand out to me, in my opinion. One in particular, and that's Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin makes a hell of a lot of sense, because this now makes it a 5 -11, but also with further protection, because normally if you Hobgoblin, people if they need to try to compete with that lane, they've got to drop bigger cards typically to compete in that lane. And now they can't, because those cards are going to be negatived even further because of the ongoing ability of US Agent. So that one did make a lot of sense to me. The other place that I saw this really standing out as a good option, potentially, oddly, Cerebro. I think Cerebro 3 actually will tremendously benefit from this, because this is a deck in general, Cerebro 3, that thrives off of smaller cards. And you can put multiple of yours in there, but now this 2/3 is acting like a 2/6 or a 2/9. because of the opposite side without affecting the Cerebro line and throwing off your balances with everybody else. So I liked that one as well. It's, in my opinion, it's a better tech than what it's being rated with. Oh, and I forgot one other synergy. Of course, I knew there were 3. I just forgot it in my notes here. The other big synergy I liked with US Agent, Doc Ock. Doc Ock makes a hell of a lot of sense in all of the ways. Why? Because now, yes, your Doc Ock won't die to their Shang-Chi, and it will actually truly clog the lane. To me, that brings so much value, especially if you're playing a priority focus style deck. War Machine could make an appearance here. We've got a couple of decks that feature Doc Ock. I'll show you where my thought processes are, including some of the more recent cards, because US Agent, I think he's going to be a better tech than people expect. I really do. I don't think he's going to be game-breaking like we saw recently with Red Hulk, but I do think he's going to be a good card and a good 2-3 to have teched in. So let's take a look at deck number 1. This is American Trash. Why? Because of the Void. The Void now becomes a -13 Void. So playing down that US Agent over in that lane, yeah, that definitely feels good. So you can take that clogging style deck and have more fun with it. Titania and Green Goblin is a great turn 4 play alternate if you don't have your Sentry for turn 4 as well. It's worth hanging on to Titania specifically because remember, your ordering is important. In the same lane, you play Titania followed by Green Goblin. Green Goblin goes over, and then Titania goes over, so you clog 2 cards into that one lane at one time. By turn 4, that might shut down the lane entirely, and now you're able to easy win that lane on turn 6. Keep an eye on that clog. And then, of course, you have your full normal junk package built into here as well. Green Goblin makes an appearance, but I opted not for Hobgoblin because it felt a little too heavy on the 5s then. Even with Mockingbird in this deck, who's going to take advantage of all of those rocks via debris, and the Demon as well. I was like, I'm missing something. The Demon in the Hood, which we've been messing with that package previously with the Patriot style builds, which I'm so incredibly proud of. And thank you, community, for all the support on those Patriot junk decks becoming so popular. I'm super proud of those. Super proud of those. So thank you. I decided to go with Galactus because if you don't have the US Agent line in that right lane, Galactus always feels good. It's just fun to get, that to happen. So I'm going to call this, because it's US Agent in a junk deck, I'm calling this one American Trash. Moving on. Let's take a look at the next deck. Eventually. There it goes. This is Dare You to Move. So now I'm focusing on Hobgoblin and Daredevil, because of course, whenever you play Hobgoblin, if you can play Daredevil, it feels incredibly strong because then you can target appropriately. So if you play Daredevil, you have good targeting with Hobgoblin. If you play US Agent, you have luck targeting benefiting you ×2, even though it's mildly forecasted, it's still a -11 that could potentially go into that lane. I'm playing Ravonna in this deck as well because we are also featuring Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, and Prof X as a lockdown style deck. And yes, War Machine came on out and everybody said lockdown was dead, but just like this card, whenever there's a featured card with a primary ability, the direct counter to it is weak for that week. However, lockdown decks are not dead. And I think this style of lockdown, which has some flexibility in it, and where US Agent is helping you more often than not, even with US Agent going on down and then Prof Xing the US Agent lane for a -2, put the Jeff in there later and call it a day. I do think that there's some strength here in this deck because you can sit on the Sunspot and the Nebula for even longer. Let's see if Dare You to Move ends up doing something and moves the needle on the meta a tad. Next up is Agent of Fists. Literally the only reason for this being named Agent of Fists is because I realized as I was building the deck, Red Hulk, Cull Obsidian, Gladiator, Shang-Chi, Thanos, and US Agent are all sitting there with a fist. I just thought it was funny. I mean, it's a fighting game, it makes sense. So we're just gonna call it Agent of Fists. And it's a Thanos deck. It's a new Thanos deck, leaning towards kind of that similar line of what I've already been experimenting with some really big, easy ways to get some power out there. And US Agent is in here as a counterplay because, look, getting down a 410 feels good. Getting down a 4-7, well, you can't Shang-Chi that. That feels just as good. So I'm playing inversely to the Scar style of synergy by saying I'm actually protecting my lane by putting good cards in there. 3-8, 4-7. Mockingbird at 9 is going to end up being a 6. So basically you're playing her like a stature, which is still good stats. So I want to try this deck because Mobius is also one of the best tech cards in the game. It's a Thanos deck. There's nothing else to really say about it, right? Okay, let's move on. Oh, look. The other version of what I just said. Thanos. It's a Scar Thanos. Do we have to keep talking about Thanos? No? It's a lot of big beefy guys, right? Cool. Protect them, and then US Agent with Luke Cage. So your guys are protected and their guys hurt? Yep, okay. You want to throw in Lockjaw just for the hell of it? Sure. All right. Thanos. All right, moving on. Let's move to C3, because I really sat for a while on C3. And I do think that this is probably the best C3 build I could think of, because I sat through every possible combination. I was looking at Hela into Blade and Swarm, and I just thought it was too cheeky. It'd be too difficult to pop off regularly. And C3 thrives on little cards. Lots of 2/3s. I didn't want to put 0 in here. I didn't want to put Blade in here. I wanted to know that I'm going to get a little information on turn 1 and then be incredibly efficient all the way on through. Primary is going to end up being Ravonna. That's going to be your number 1 play for turn 2. Turn 3, then is where you start going wild. Have fun. If you want to go Cerebro Mystique early, go for it. Have fun. But I didn't put Bast in here because we're going Ravonna and we're going Iron Man. So you have full control. You have Shang-Chi and Valkyrie to reduce down as you need. You can beat everybody on up. Cerebro Mystique, I decided to not go with the magic line because it ends up hurting Cerebro more than running extra control cards like Shang-Chi, Valkyrie, and Iron Man. So, US Agent in here in particular, you have to know that you're attempting, keyword, to build your decks knowing that US Agent will not go on the same lane as Valkyrie specifically. Iron Man, you can get around that. You can deal with the -3 from the Iron Man. It's not ideal, but you can deal with the -3 from Iron Man. And Shang-Chi is such a big power swing, it's not going to be the end of the world either way. So I ran this list in particular, knowing that my only quote-unquote risk card was going to be Valkyrie. Could you put in other cards in here into C3? Of course. Everybody has different preferences of which way they like to run it. Some people prefer the Sentinel line, for example, for the consistency. I like the inconsistency by putting in Quake and Scarlet Witch versus the 3-cost Rhino. So I went down that path because I have my control elements, I have my sneak elements, I have my move elements, I have my destroy elements, I have my big power elements, I have big destroy control elements. It has a little bit of everything. I do truly think that US Agent's best home is actually C3. Even if we end up trying some weird cheeky things like just tossing it into Affliction Evo because it's an Affliction card that could end up helping Abomination if you draw really poorly. You know, you could go with double protection by having, you know, Moon Girl get a couple of US Agents out there, drop them on turn 5, reduce everybody and their sister down, and then just play a whole bunch of double A-bombs. You could go down that path. Luke Cage in here, of course, to protect your She-Hulk and Hulk and put down at the last end. You get the idea of what we're doing with this, right? I mean, it's an Evo deck. It's the same thing. Like, there's only so many times you need to talk about Thanos, and there's only so many times you need to talk about High Evo. If you haven't figured out these two decks at this point, you need to take a look at some of the past content here on the YouTube channel as well. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button down below. Let's end with a variation on a incredibly popular deck right now, courtesy of Gregor, which is the Toxic Surfer deck. This is Surfin in the Trenches, and it is using US Agent because it's just good stats. In this deck in particular, it's incredibly good stats. So by tweaking out certain cards and tweaking in others by getting rid of the the Absorbing Man in particular, I didn't think it was necessary in this style of deck. So I removed that made sure that we have the magic line and synergy, and what US Agent's going to do is be a tall card. Keyword there, a tall card that ends up being a 1-drop on the final turn when you run this deck appropriately. If you still get magic and you can play Sarah on 5, that's, I mean, obviously that's just all of the energy and all of the things to mess with. But if you don't get magic out, it's still a 1-cost card post Sarah. And as a 1/3 with downside only for your opponent, and you're running 3-cost cards ridiculously and Luke Cage, that card in particular could be tall enough to go over all by itself and swing a lane, treating it like it's a 1/6 or a 1/9, depending on the Thanos player that you're playing against that week, because maybe they're playing one of the other Thanos decks that I suggested. So I like the idea of putting it into a toxic deck, whether it be here, whether it be Evo. Putting it into Thanos and Control makes a lot of sense, but I do, honestly, I want to come back here from C to Shining 3 and say that I think Cerebro 3 is the best home for Agent, US Agent. So my question to you is, does that sell it to you? Does that make you say, I need to have US Agent? I already know the answer, because my rating system on him is, if you're floating a whole bunch of credits and energies and keys and stuff, and you want to be collection complete, you're going to get this whether you want to or not. Like me, like I'm a creator. I want to get this card. I want to test this card because I want to be hopeful that something really cool is going to happen from it. But I'm not too optimistic because of exactly what I opened with. There's great cards coming out this season. There's great cards that have already come out. People have really incredibly hyped Red Hulk, for example, for all the right and proper reasons. You probably used your keys on Red Hulk. Don't feel like you're missing out on US Agent is my projection. However, there's about this much chance that all of us are wrong, and that the card is actually an incredibly strong tech card for these low archetypes. Like even Bounce you could throw it into because it's great stats and great value against very tall decks. Remember, Living Tribunal's a thing. This is great against that. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with US Agent? We're going to find out, though. We're going to try it out here live on Twitch, because that's where we are for sometimes even 5 days a week, testing out all of the new cards, typically in the early hours for the States in particular, your afternoons if you're over in the EU. So thank you. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Hopefully this helped give you an idea of how to look at US Agent. Is he going to be worth your tokens? No, in my opinion. Is he going to be worth your spotlights, though? That, well, you're going to have to tune into the stream to get the final verdict. I'm not optimistic, but I'm going to leave it at maybe. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.